challenge a lot of women have is they think that men are just hairy women. They think we relate the way they relate. It's like, it's not true. We function differently.
Welcome to Sex and the Solo Girl. Join your host, her inner circle, and expert guests weekly for chats about dating, secure attachment, the solo lifestyle, doing relationships differently, and of course, sex. And here's your host, Janice Formichella.
Welcome to Sex and the Solo Girl, everyone. Though I suppose everyone already knew that that's where you are. I don't know. I've been doing the podcast, for 6 months, and I'm just still giddy over the whole thing. And welcome back to Sex and the Solo Girl, my good friend, Barry Selby. Hi.
Hi, nice to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. You are articulate and you know so much about every topic that we do together. You're just thinking and speaking on your feet, and I'm glad to have you as a friend and colleague.
Thank you so much. Glad to contribute and offer things I've learned over the many years I've been doing this work.
So great. Today we're talking about honoring the divine feminine. Honoring the divine feminine inside of me is something that I think I've really leaned into probably the last 4 years. And it has completely changed my life. It's changed how I operate day to day. It's changed how I dress. It's changed how I decorate. And I have to say, it has changed the way I interact with men, the types of people that I attract, the types of men I attract, and also the good decisions that I make in dating and in my friendships. So I've wanted to cover it for a while. However, I think that it's an oft misunderstood topic. And so I wanted to do it intentionally. And I wanted to have somebody else on who has an understanding of it. And Barry was actually quite keen. So thank you. And also, why did this attract you? Because you reached out to me quite quickly when I put on social media that I wanted to do this topic. And I have to say, I was relieved that you were one of the people, not the other person, by the way. There was a couple other men who wanted to talk about the divine masculine and feminine. Of course, I chose you. Why is this a topic that you are passionate about or interested in or well-versed in? Let's hear it.
Well, simply put, this conversation really entered my life in early 2007. So it's been, 13 years? Yes, no. 17 years.
17.
I thought I was good at mathematics.
We are gearing up. I mean, 2025. Can you believe it?
I know. Well,
I don't often say this. I feel like it's just not even important to dwell on your age. But I've got to say, man, I was there when we rung in 2000. And the fact that it's 2025 now, woo! But
yeah. So anyway, to answer the question, the polarity conversation basically changed my life in early 2007, and I didn't have a clue what that was up until that point. So when I discovered this piece, because for me, up to that point, I'm not sure I shared this with you before, my understanding of being a man was basically meant occupy one of two spaces: either the nice guy, passive beta male type, or the macho, my way the highway, egotistical route. That was the only two options I could see when I grew up. That's what I grew up with. So the polarity conversation basically introduced me to what I would come to know as what I really want to live to be authentically, which is the masculine model, because the masculine model is beyond both of the other ones I'd mentioned. And when I started discovering that, in fact, the first retreat I went on with some great teachers out of Vancouver, I got to see also not only how to be more masculine and see what other men who occupied the masculine work, because we became brothers in that moment. I also got to discover the feminine and really relish in its magnificence, because I didn't know at that point women could be that way. I mean, I may have seen it before in my life. I never really consciously witnessed and observed it in close quarters, and it literally blew me away.
You had probably witnessed women who were magnetic for some reason.
Yeah. And the thing is, at that point is that, and I know we'll talk about it a little bit later in the conversation about how women I've been around and dated weren't like that. They were oftentimes more male than I was. It felt like they were so like driven and getting things done and make things happen. There's kind of the I won't say the jurisdiction, but it's kind of like the wheelhouse of the masculine body or the male-bodied person, because that's the way we're functioning. And definitely, we'll talk about the difference between masculine and feminine in
Yeah.
functionality as well.
Which I'm looking forward to. I'm really glad that you immediately mentioned polarity theory. A lot of people are not familiar with this, and it's one of my favorite topics because I actually, when done properly, quote unquote, and consciously, again, quote unquote, I actually believe very strongly in these concepts. So let's talk about it. What is polarity theory?
Well, first of all, I want to offer a correction because I don't think it's theory. I think it's practice.
What is polarity practice? You are absolutely right. This isn't
We
a
live it.
theory.
It's not a
This
theory that's
plays
in
out.
books. It's like we embody it. That's how we do it. And so to put it succinctly, masculine. The way I understand it, masculinity and femininity are on a spectrum. This polarity we have, like magnets have a north and south pole. There's a spectrum of more north, more south on the magnet. Same in polarity for chemistry, sexual chemistry, connection, male and female behavior. And some caveats to put up front is masculinity and femininity, because they are on a spectrum, we all carry that energy within us. And depending where we reside naturally is how we function in the world. That doesn't necessarily match up one-on-one with being male or female, or straight or gay. Masculinity and femininity is true for everybody. Masculine and femininity is a spectrum we live on. And also we're not stuck on one point. We move along that spectrum depending on what we need to do in the world. Like if we're driving a car, generally we're in our masculine energy because we're directional, we're going somewhere. Whereas if we're just embracing the world and living, just taking the world in, it can be more feminine energy. Again, independent of the body type or our polarity inside. Like we're straight or gay, it doesn't make a difference. Like I know for myself, I spent a lot of time in my feminine. I have done over the years, but I thought that was being a nice guy. But it turned out what it was is that I had a very open heart in the work I do, very compassionate, very caring, which are more feminine traits. But I was absolutely male and very straight in my being. And it's like they're not exclusive of each other. So that's one piece. The second piece is, and the way I learned it, and I think it's true, the way it works is that we are born naturally a certain way, like certain polarity. Things in life happen to us. And it's like, so what happens is we put on like shells or layers of different behaviors. So we start out one way, and when something happens, we may put on a different shell to either protect or fit in differently.
That's a really good point. And I think, and we're going to talk about this, how women act in order to interact and engage with men in the way that they think that men want to. And my example, I'm pretty much as feminine as they come, which I'm very proud to say. But when I was in high school, I got really into skateboarding culture. I was very attracted to it for whatever reason, still am. And what I thought at the time was, in order to engage with boys in skate culture or attract them, because I was very attracted as a teenager to boys in that culture, was that I needed to act like them and dress like them. And that was how I was going to attract one into my life. And
Right.
I learned then that is absolutely not the case. I think that skate culture is a very masculine. It is. It's very, very exclusively masculine. It is. And a man who is embodying that actually is maybe more attracted to somebody who's embodying their femininity. But I didn't understand that at the time, and it's something that I do now. And I think that it's something that's misunderstood today, and that some women say things and do things that they believe that men want to hear, rather than just allowing their natural femininity to come out and then seeing what would they attract.
Absolutely. Well, the basic principle is simple: is that the more different we are, the better off we are to each other.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
the challenge is,
beautiful.
like, one of the challenges, Alison Armstrong, one of my teachers, and I love what she says, how the challenge a lot of women have is they think that men are just hairy women. They think we relate the way they relate. It's like, it's not true. We function differently. So honoring the differences is where the real juice happens and where the joy happens.
It's true, and I'm glad that we're starting this conversation because it's something I've wanted to talk about on the podcast since I conceived of Sex and the Solo Girl. I also want to point out there's a difference between polarity, which is something that happens on a spectrum, and a binary, which suggests that one is better than the other, and that is absolutely not the case with
Right.
this. So we understand what polarity practice is. Is there anything else that you want to say about the divine feminine inside of women and the divine masculine inside of men, for lack of better? I mean, so we're just going to break it down. We've
Sure.
only got an hour to go into this. So what what is the divine that rests inside of us?
Well, first of all, let's say, obviously, when we're talking about the divine, we're talking about something not so much physical, but more spiritual.
Yes.
So so to walk around in everyday life and be in the divine is hard to do necessarily for some people. Some people can do it, but it's not that easy. So don't get attached to that way of being.
Okay.
But the
Okay.
divinity of the feminine, the divinity of the masculine transcends the physical, so to speak. And so for a woman who's in a divine feminine, the term the goddess has been thrown around for ages, this sort of flippant terms like, oh, she's a goddess, she's this and the other. Well, the truth is, the divine feminine is that sort of goddess energy, is that level of depth and compassion and care that is not so much transcends the human, but it's the elevated human, so to speak. It's where we have such care for the world, compassion for the world, that in everyday life we wouldn't be able to maintain very easily. Maybe we could if we were like Mother Teresa or something, but it's something that is more, it's more
She was
selective.
anti-choice. I just want to point that
Yeah,
out.
well, I'm using
No.
her
It's
service
totally
work.
totally fine. This
Yeah,
is
I'm just talking about her
inclusive, but
service work, not talking about her personal behavior and her personal beliefs, talking about the service work she
okay.
did with that sort of compassion. And so, and divine masculine is also a level of altruism and a level of service that is
Yeah.
about being in strong leadership, but from such a giving place and such a caring place that it's almost like it's not about his ego. It's about how he can serve and how he can give. So the divinity just raises the bar, so to speak, of being masculine or feminine, as far as I'm concerned. And it's a really beautiful place to play. And in primary relationship, especially in the privacy of your own home, if you as a couple can play that level with each other, it can really raise the level of connection, intimacy, depth, unity that you can create with each other. So it's cool to have that.
It is. And being able to communicate about it really adds a lot of juice and power. So, just as far as divine masculine and feminine go, these are things that people have elevated and even worshipped for since the
Yeah.
beginning of time. So, one, I wanted to read a quote. One of my favorite resources and something that I've had for 15, 20 years is The Goddess Oracle by Amy Sophia Marshensky. And it talks about the goddess in all of us. And it says, it is important for women to reclaim the goddess, not just one goddess, but all goddesses. The more goddesses we know, the more we can celebrate, honor, and respect the diversity of the feminine. If we celebrate, honor, and respect the diversity of the goddesses, then we can do it for ourselves. Why the goddess? Because we are women, diverse women who need to see the divine feminine reflected back to us, from ourselves to our goddesses and back to ourselves. Because all women are the goddess, it's time that we saw ourselves this way. And it's an oracle deck, and each day, or however you decide to practice oracle stuff, you pick a card and it goes into a different goddess. And this made a big difference in my life. But my point is reading that is that we all have it inside of us, men and women, and recognizing that it makes you act a different way when you believe that you have something divine inside of
That's
you.
This is one of the gifts of this is when we start to own that level of care and compassion within us, we treat other people differently.
Mhm.
So I would say if you can explore that and play with it in your life and see how you change how you interact, especially with loved ones or with family or with even with authority figures, how differently you would interact with them because you carry yourself with more compassion and then you carry them with more compassion as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, why not? Let's play that way.
So this
Hmm.
leads perfectly into our next topic, which is how to begin with this. And everyone, I know Barry's coming from a male perspective, but I do think that he has more understanding about this than the average person in general. And also, I'm studying Tantra right now. And actually, I want to ask you about this. So, there's an entire chapter actually in the book that I'm reading, which is The Joy of Sexual Ecstasy. And it's about, so for each, a woman trying to embody the masculine and seeing what that's like as a portal to more fully embodying the feminine, and vice versa. So would you say that you've experienced that? If so, I mean, can you really explain that concept? Because to me, even knowing so much about this, I was like, first of all, that's a stretch and a half for me. But then after I started thinking about it and in some cases doing it, I guess it started to make sense, but it's hard for me to articulate.
Well, the thing is, first of all, I have not read the book. I'm not studying tantra, so I can't speak from experience of those language or that language.
Mhm.
However, the idea of practicing connecting to and embodying either end of the spectrum of the polarity of masculine and feminine is not a bad thing to learn. I mean, because first of all, if you are more aligned to the feminine, going more fully into the feminine in your practice is a good thing to do because it reinforces your embodiment of that energy, which is wonderful. And if you're in the masculine, same thing. If you're male and masculine, those things work for you too. But to switch polarities to moving into the other one, first of all, we can start recognizing how maybe you spent all your time there without realizing it, and it's time to let go of it.
Oh, yes. Love it. Sorry.
That's okay. But the second piece is that you can really start to become better at understanding your polar opposite when you do have that relationship with somebody.
Mhm.
I talk about this. This is something I talked about with, which I learned from one of my teachers about how to, because we talk about in the dating relationship conversation about how there's chemistry when you meet somebody. And for a lot of people, chemistry disappears after a few months. It sort of fades away. And one of my teachers said, no, chemistry is renewable. I was like, what? How do you do that? He said, well, imagine basically that I'm using a straight couple for example here, but you're in a committed relationship and you're in the bedroom, you want to have, and you're ready to have sex, being very basic at this level. But you realize you both had your days of work and family and all these other things you've been going on. You've been so busy, you haven't reset, so to speak, when you come together at night. So you're in the bedroom before you get together in bed. He said something you can do it like as a ceremony or a ritual is that each partner, for example, the male partner, gathers up all the feminine energy he's been carrying all day long from doing all the things he's done in his work and his life and in all he's done, and gathers up a little bundle that he gives to his partner as a gift for safekeeping. And then she does the same thing, which she may have more effort with, is to gather all the masculine energy she's been using all day long, driving, working, all the things she's done, into a little bundle, a package she gives to him for safekeeping.
Oh my God, it's beautiful.
That
Thank you so
simple
much.
act, as much as it may seem hokey and not real, it's all, it's a woo stuff, changes the energy between the two people. Because what it
Well,
does, it puts an intention forward that one partner's going to be more in the masculine, one partner's going to be more in the feminine, and it tends to show up that way because you've set an intention for it. So even though it isn't like, okay, this bundle of light you can see in your hands, it's not, it's invisible. But the sense of that creates a different energetic. And I'm sure with Tantra, there is a level of embodiment that happens by shifting your own internal state. And so this is what can help with relationships. And so the idea about being in each other's shoes, so to speak, is you get to understand more of the opposite polarity. And that's such a gift because then you'll have more awareness and ideally care for the other partner who is in that polarity you're not normally in.
and especially as a woman, I think that attempting to embody or understand the divine masculine makes you feel safer with surrendering to it.
When a man understands the feminine more, his way of being with a woman's can be much more respectful.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. And we're about to dive into polarity in dating and relationships. But I just wanted to say, as far as some of the sounding woo woo, really inviting this into a relationship is, like I already said, about intentionality and something that my partner and I do often, not always. I mean, we're spontaneous and knocking it out a lot of the time as well. But we will we'll sit cross-legged from each other
Hmm?
and each say something that we respect or honor about the other person as
Yeah,
kind of an
yeah,
opening to an
that's beautiful.
intimate and
Yeah, yeah,
it makes such a difference. Oh my
absolutely.
God. It's beautiful, and I would encourage people, if this interests you, get comfortable talking about it with your friends, with your partners, etc. Along those lines, let's
Mm.
talk about how honoring the divine feminine can improve dating and relationships. Some of this we've already kind of touched on, but really, I know for a fact that my audience, male and female, want connection romantically. And I'm sorry, but this was a game changer for me. First of all, because leaning into this and discovering it inside of yourself, it helps you to know your worth. And that is really
Oh yeah.
the starting point to opening yourself up to a connection with another person.
Right. But first of all, don't
Mhm.
apologize for saying it. You said sorry, and it's like, no, don't be sorry.
Okay.
But also, and so to speak on
Thank
that point,
you for the adjustment, Barry.
well, first of all, I think I mentioned this earlier. I may not, if I didn't, I'll say it again now. Is that when women are in their feminine, they are equal to men in their masculine. There's no difference. So excuse me, there's no difference in value. They may act very differently and appear very differently, but it's not one better than the other. Like you were saying earlier with binary,
Hmm.
there's no one better than the other. It's equal, just different. And that's the thing is with difference comes respect. And as I mentioned earlier, again, when especially when men really start to know more about the divine feminine, their level of honor and respect for the woman who's embodying the feminine is much easier. Again, I'm speaking heterosexually here. And so having that understanding makes dating different because it's no longer a transactional experience, it's a transformational experience. And shifting that energy alone, because unfortunately so many men treat dates as a transaction. It's like they want to give something to get something done. And it's like it's not
Yeah.
about that. It's about
Hmm.
what's possible, what can be transformed, what can be shifted, what can be elevated when you are with somebody who you're attracted to.
And
Frankly,
allow them
not with
to
somebody you're attracted
surrender.
to. Yeah,
Hmm.
it becomes more respectful. And
Yeah.
frankly, in the dating scene, we definitely, I think, need more respect with each other because that's become kind of a passe experience. It's no longer valid anymore. But it's like, no, we need it back again.
Yeah. Each person definitely seeking something for their own gratification. I something that I wanted to ask you about is, I believe that when a woman learns to honor the divine feminine, that they will, and I put this in quotes, but and again, I was going to apologize for it, but I won't. A woman who embodies this will understand or be able to recognize a quote unquote good man. And I don't know, do you have anything to say about that? Because I can almost pick it out. And I also have to say it's kind of rare, but for me, I see it.
So let me unpack this slightly because the thing is,
Okay. Yeah.
it's
Thank
more to
you.
this meet the eye. So, but yes, first of all, when a woman honors her divine feminine, she'll be more selective. Yes. However, or as one of the challenges is that I've talked about this in my own work, especially with clients with history they haven't resolved. And I'm going to sidebar this a little bit because I think we talked about this as well. Is we are unfortunately, until we know differently, running default programming we learned when we were kids, watching our parents be together. So if our parents were in relationships with each other and they were acted a certain way, whether it was abusive or loud or cold or whatever it was, we tend to think that's the way it's supposed to be. So unconsciously, we're running that pattern as an adult without unless we change it. Which means that even though we may embody divinity and holiness of who we are, our unconscious wiring, our unconscious programming is still seeking a match for patterns what is still running from when we were very young. So the challenge is they become counter to each other. And so part of this work, what you do with my clients is so important, is that we have to make peace with our past and really start shifting those old unconscious programs into conscious intentional programs that are much more functional. And you combine that with the divine feminine, divine masculine, then you're golden. But it does require a bit more work to really come into alignment to who you really are and what you really want.
And doing the work is okay. I mean, you will discover so much about yourself when you commit to doing this. And I know for me, that's what I did. And it was not only revelatory, but it was fun. And then I
Hmm.
saw the payoffs almost immediately. So, I another way that this can help in dating and relationships for both, I think women might struggle with this a little bit more, is boundaries.
Mm.
and recognizing red flags and knowing what is okay and not okay. And I think that this comes quite easily when you get to the point that you feel the divine feminine inside of you and recognize it. I think that you're able to say no easier, or just simply, I believe that your intuition is heightened so that if something feels wrong or right, you will recognize it for what it is. And along the lines of feeling right, a lot of people still go for the spark and just feeling it, and these things that I don't completely believe in. But I think that when you're embodying this, you will recognize that it's not about the spark. It's, about the intellectual connection and the compatibility and how a man shows up day to day. And on the flip side, you'll be able to more clearly recognize when something isn't quite right there.
Yeah. That's the thing, that it discernment is good, and having boundaries is actually a requirement. And the challenge is that oftentimes we don't trust them or respond to them. We sort of think we know better than our own boundaries, which is not a good choice. So understanding that when we're out and we meet somebody, and especially when we ignore that small inner voice, that little radar inside going, this isn't going to be good, and we do it anyway, and then we go, damn, I should have listened. Next time, listen. We have that. The wisdom we have inside, everybody has inside, is innate, but it depends how badly we've muffled it and stuffed it down and not listened to it. I have my own relationship with that voice that I would say, cultivated, but I've made mistakes along the way too. But I've definitely cultivated over the years to become much more able to hear and listen to that little guidance inside that I know better, but I don't necessarily ignore it anymore like I used to. So we all have that. And so boundaries is part of that, where we have this, and you mentioned red flags, we have this recognition that behavior, this thing we see with this person is very clear. We go, yeah, but they're worth saving, or they're worth being with because I think I can get something from them. It's like, what are we using to argue with ourselves to say yes to something we know we shouldn't say yes to?
Mm-hmm. And honoring it will help to alleviate that. We still will make decisions that are not in our best interest, but that is data collection.
Yes.
And also not judging yourself too harshly, which that also goes along with honoring the divine inside of us, because we can hold space for the mistakes that we make and ask ourselves what we learned and move it or shake it and move on. Barry, we are going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about how to begin to honor these things inside of us. We've got a cute little list, but before, can you let people know where you'd like them to go and hang out with you online?
Well, my site is a good place to go start with, which is basically my name. And basically, all my social media, except for Instagram and Threads, is my name. So Barry Selby on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, everywhere is that. And if you want to find out more about me, go to my site, which is my name, barryselby.com.
Great. Please do. If you're a woman who wants to learn about how to use this out in the world to attract good people to date, Barry is your man.
Thank you.
A lot of you know that I am a breakup coach, but did you also know that I work one-on-one with singles to maximize their solo chapter of life? My program, Single and Secure, offers customized packages that include things like becoming securely attached, visualization and manifestation for the future, learning to embrace and love your single life, getting ready to date again, self-pleasure, preparing for your next relationship. Let's have a chat to talk about how Single and Secure can add fun and power to your life. Schedule your free intro call using the link at the top of my show notes.
Welcome back, everyone. This all might sound fine and dandy. I don't know. As somebody who only came into this way of living in my very late 30s, I don't disclose how old I am. I actually do understand how this might seem like something to roll your eyes at. When I didn't have an understanding about this, I really thought, oh my God, please, like this is actually not a healthy way to engage with men. I know now that it's because I didn't understand the concepts. I wasn't possibly around people where I got to learn about it in a healthy way. I actually was in a very conscious community when I was in Melbourne, but I saw it play out in ways that I didn't think were healthy. And because also I was coming into it with a tiny bit of bias already, I didn't recognize it when it was healthy. So that being said, I understand how it can seem either silly or inaccessible
Mhm.
to people. So let's talk about some ways to get started. If, especially if you feel turned on by this conversation. First of all, we're going to talk about respect for oneself and self-nurturing activities. Barry, I was excited that you wanted to go there with this episode. My
Mhm.
first tip is honoring the body,
Yeah.
taking care of yourself physically. The more that you can feel comfortable in your body for men and women, the more likely you will be to be able to. I mean, I think it's like something that a little bit starts from the inside out. And that
Yeah.
was really my thing. I understood these concepts for a while, but I wasn't as comfortable in my body as I am now, perhaps especially the last 4 years. And you can, even by the photographs of me, see where the transition took place, between not really being 100% and then being 100%
Yeah.
comfortable in my own skin. And part of that is taking care of yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mhm. And
Another level.
then go ahead.
Right. Well, it's another level I throw on top of that because I do a lot of work with self-relationship in my work. In fact, I'm actually creating, almost ready to launch a new quiz or assessment, which is self-relationship centric about the ways
Okay.
we take care of ourselves. So this is part of it too. But one thing I'll say is notice how we talk to ourselves. One of the biggest challenges I think we face is we don't necessarily listen to what we say under our voice, so to speak, inside our head about our own bodies, our own physiques, our own way of living, where we start to denigrate or demean or just put ourselves down because we're not good enough, or because one of the traps we fall into, we run the game of comparison with everybody else who's better than us, or I should say, everybody we think is better
We
than us.
think we
We come up short. Yeah, and so the challenge is can we first of all be aware and listen and catch that voice in action, and then go, hang on a second, do I want to keep saying that? So, like saying about taking care of yourself physically, definitely watch your mental self flagellation of your own way of being because you don't trust yourself enough to listen to your voice. Because part of what makes ourselves healthier and happier is trusting who we are. And if we can't trust ourselves because we don't talk to ourselves the right way, we'll never get there. So, watch what we say to ourselves.
Yes, thank you. And we're going to talk about honoring the soul in just a moment. I just want to give a couple. Yes, thank you so much for that. I used to have thoughts that I will never repeat on this show because they were so negative. And I've come
Mm.
a long way. Like looking back, I'm like, wow, I can't believe you said that to yourself. Some ways that I take care of my body, a lot of movement. So just making sure that it works, stretching. As you are aging, you got to stretch. And that's how you prevent having, especially spinal injuries. I know that that might seem basic, but if you have a spinal injury, you're not going to be able to move fluidly. And that's important for
Yeah.
men and women. So I get lots of fresh air, lots of water, just little silly things like that. I personally have a couple things that make me feel good as far as my appearance goes. I swear by eyelash extensions. I know that might seem superficial, but you will be amazed what it can do for your confidence. So that's something that I suggest just as far as honoring
Okay.
the body. That's just a tip. And also things like lotions and perfumes and just things that make you feel just generally more sensual.
And more
Let's
feminine.
and feminine. Yes. Um, Thank you. And figure out, what colors you enjoy wearing, what cuts of clothing, this type of thing. And it's not about one um one style or aesthetic or silhouette as far as what you wear. You will learn over time what you are gravitated towards and also what you feel most confident in. Like I, for instance, even being very feminine and I love to dress up, I don't wear high heels. I and because once I put them on, I kind of lose my confidence. I don't feel like I am strutting around the world easily. And so for me, that's something that I don't choose to do. On the other hand, it boosts some women's confidence. So again, see what works for you.
Yeah.
And I maybe, but as a man, you don't have much to say for that, but that, which is totally fine. I'm throwing that in there. Let's talk about honoring the soul. Barry talked about self-talk. It is absolutely crucial, and it is something that you might have to train yourself out of over time. And so I will say, just pay attention to it.
Yeah, well, I actually would say another thing, if you want to actually test it, so to speak. One thing I've also recommended to my clients is about working with affirmations. It sounds so trite to say what are affirmations, but the thing about affirmations that's good is that one, it starts affirming what you want, but secondly, it will start to piss off that voice that doesn't like what you're saying.
Yeah, that's cute. I like that.
Well, because affirmation, because what you're doing is like when you start to make it obvious what you want and what party doesn't want that, it's going to start saying, hang on a second. That voice is going to become louder, so you'll be able to hear that voice more easily. So in a way, you can use affirmations as a way to flush out the negativity that you've been carrying around forever you don't realize you've been doing. So you can play with that way.
Thank you. I'm making a note to myself, and I'll just put in a self-plug. It's my podcast. I am a teacher on Insight Timer, and I have some wonderful affirmations tracks. And I think I'm going to make an affirmations tracks for calling in the divine feminine. Anyways, everyone go over to Insight Timer if you have it. Look me up. And I've just been enjoying it so much. For the first few months, didn't really take off. And now it's like, wow, I'm getting new reviews like every couple of days. I know. I'm just so excited. I wanted to do Insight Timer for so long. Thank you so much. I keep on looking at my inbox like, really? Yay. Okay. So self-talk, self-reflection, I think goal setting. And that is because a lot of embodying the divine feminine is just simply intentional. And so I think goal setting in your life can be a way to call this in and take charge of your life and honor yourself and your future and your destiny.
With a caveat, again, little caveats, because yes, having goals is especially great. But one of the things about goals we have a challenge with is we start putting steps in front of them, how to make them happen. And the truth is, if we've got really clear goals that are more spiritually based or more divine based, we don't need to know how to get there. We just need to know where it is we want to go. And then the steps will start showing up for us when we open up that space. So that's a trusting process. But when it does that way, it's like you start realizing how much easier life can be. But at the same time, we got to keep to that track. You can't get complacent because then you might fall off the track, so to speak. So you got to stay like, okay, what's next? Notice what clues are out there, what hints are out there to give you guidance, what next step to take, rather than saying, well, my goal is to have this, so let me put out 20 steps to get there.
Okay.
Some things can be that way when they're very mechanical, but the truth is when you're doing that, you're in your masculine, because masculine is very much about mechanical steps and goals. So if you're in your feminine, that pulls you out of your feminine. So having clarity of where you want to go, but not so much clarity about how you're going to get there is a much more feminine way of doing things.
This brings up a good topic, and that is maybe a few qualities that are inherently masculine when you're leaning into that and feminine. And I know you wanted to talk about this. So I'm just going to open the floor to you. What do you think are a few qualities that reflect or represent the divine masculine / a man who is in a healthy relationship with his masculine? I'll just let you take it.
Well, I'll do it in contrast to masculine and feminine, because basically the masculine and feminine energies are opposite each other. Again, like magnets, north and south poles are opposite each other, but they also attract each other. So same with masculine and feminine energies. The masculine energy is more like singular focused. It's very linear, goal oriented, directional, getting things done, making things happen. That's a masculine energetic. The feminine is more embracing everything. It's more open to, and it's also more inclusive in the way it functions. The masculine basically, it's about how it's like when you're on the journey, you want to smell the roses. The masculine is looking at the goal to get there. The feminine is smelling the roses. So there's a different energetic of the two things.
Yeah.
So,
And both are beautiful
absolutely.
ways to operate.
And so, like, for example, and also the masculine tends to be more competitive because the masculine is about getting to a goal, and it's almost like when it's truly in the goal, not as in destructive competitive, but playful competitiveness. So the masculine has like is going for something, then it's like just go for the goal, and that singular focus. The challenge is, and this I've got a couple of tips on this one. Women get upset with men because they don't often hear them. Because men are so focused on what they're doing, they don't hear anything out because it's so single focused. One of the gifts of the masculine is laser focus. One of the challenges of the masculine is laser focus, meaning that we are really good at getting one thing done, but we do it to despite everything else. So our woman's going to go, excuse me, and we're like, we're not even aware of her. So the challenge isn't this. Then a sidebar this one for a second. This is something I remember a friend of mine said, is that the challenge is, like, for example, when a man comes home from work and he's tired, he will sit down in front of the TV, get a beer and watch football, sort of thing, for example. Just an example.
I mean, it's an apt example.
No, but
that's how my dad was.
Right. So when his woman comes in, wants to get his attention, it's like she could walk across the screen like naked and he won't even notice her because he's so focused on one thing. I'm not saying it's always true, but it's kind of true. So I'm just like, get out of the way, I'm watching the football, sort of thing. The thing is that for a woman who really knows her man and knows his masculinity, will recognize that what she needs to do is get his attention when she needs to say, honey, I want to talk to you, when there's a break. So he can finish what he's doing and then be ready for her. Because the truth is, if she pulls him out of the game to talk to her, his mind's still half in the game. He won't hear what she's saying because he's always watching the score.
It is so important for men to have time to themselves and have the self-care. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Well, the women also need self-care too. There's another piece I can talk about that as well. There's so much we can unpack here. But so the truth is, in this place, is when a woman wants to get a man's attention, know that she needs almost like, not so much schedule it, but plan, like knowing what he's doing, being aware of what he's up to know that she can say, look, when you're done with this piece, can we talk then? Because it's easier for him to finish what he's doing than to stop, talk to her and go back to what he was doing. It's much easier to let him finish that step, whatever step it is. If he's working, if it's wait until the next, the commercial break, or waiting until the end of the goal he's working on, then it can be easier. But the feminine absolutely needs to have time to recoup, restore, and be present. And that can be anything from a bubble bath to going shopping with her feminine friends to doing yoga. It's like whatever it is. You mentioned movement earlier, and I wanted to touch on that too. One of the things that restores the feminine energy is movement. The feminine is life, its movement is energy, whereas the masculine's natural state is
right?
stillness. Yeah, and the masculine state is stillness. Because again, opposites. Like the truth, like nature is feminine. Mother Nature, it's called Mother Nature for a reason. It's feminine. So movement and life is feminine energy moving. To be blunt, masculine's energy is darkness and death. It's the stillness of the void where nothing happens. It's the true ultimate like satisfaction for a man. Like we go for goals so we can be done with them. We want to, it's like we rest. When we've done a goal, we rest up. We're like, got that done. I'm so happy now. I can relax, put my feet up. So for men, we do goals to get somewhere, but no, we don't go for the goal to get the next goal. Yes, we should to stay alive, so to speak. But to get the next goal is after we had a break to enjoy being there. There's an accomplishment. We love accomplishment as masculine men to a large degree. And it doesn't have to be like, a multi-million-dollar company. It could just be taking out the trash. It could be getting from, driving to work and getting there on time is a goal, achievement.
Solving a problem. I mean, I know that's a cliched example, but it's true.
But it's not about the size of the goal, it's just getting the goal. Incremental. And for women, having that time to be embodied, that one of the things I learned from one of the teachers, in a couple, a little tip for the men here. If your partner, your woman goes out to work every day, like maybe you do as well, when you come home, you come in before her, do her a favor. When she comes home, you take her suitcase or a business case, her keys, her phone, everything from her. You leave it to the bathroom where you've got a bubble bath bubbling away for her. And you let her go in the bath and say, you know what, I'll see you in half an hour. And leave it to herself. She'll love that time with herself to re-nurture and embody the feminine, candles, everything else. And she'll be much more appreciative when she comes out. So not saying you do it for that reason, but you'll transform the experience she has when she comes home from work. And so there's things you can do as a man for your woman, things you do as a woman for your man that can be really responsive and nurture their natural beingness.
Thank you. And again, along those lines, somebody once described it to me as when it comes to a stream, the masculine is the earth around the stream, and the feminine is the water. Yes. And you need both to make a stream. Such a beautiful way of looking at it. Okay, Barry, before we completely wrap up, something that I thought was interesting that you put in our outline, and yes, I do plan out these episodes, everyone, to a certain extent. I'm a lot better than I used to be as far as scripting things out. You live and you learn as a content creator. Barry, you wanted to touch on the top 2 qualities women need for men. And I think that this could be something, or it is something important for both. And actually, this is going to be a bit of a surprise to me as far as what you believe this to be. So,
well, it might not be. You might feel it's very natural when you hear it. It's not like something like out of left field. But the truth is, what I've really gotten clear about recently is what I know that women want most from men is for them to be trustworthy and to feel safe. Because ultimately, especially in this modern day, what women have been through the last 40, 50 years in terms of the culture, the way women have been abused, basically, is that a lot of women don't feel safe with men and they don't trust them. And so if men can demonstrate, not tell her, but to demonstrate by the way he is, that he's trustworthy and he's safe for her. Because some women say, well, when he's safe, he's going to be boring. He's not sexy. It's like, no, real safety is a much safer place for sex and connection and intimacy.
And it's attractive.
Yeah.
And you will find yourself more turned on by this, especially over time.
Right. And just put the other side of the conversation, I've been thinking about what is it that men need from women. One of the things that men need from women is encouragement. Women, unfortunately, for a lot of times have knocked men down. They've undercut them. They've criticized them, demeaned them, and said other things to them, unfortunately. So what men really need from women who they really feel they can trust, and trust is in there, is to be encouraged. Not to necessarily be cheerleader. That's pushing it more. It's just be encouragement, because there's something about a woman letting a man know you can get up tomorrow and you can do bigger, you can have more success. Maybe it didn't work out today. Today, tomorrow it'll be better. That can be such a rewarding thing for a man to have from his woman.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've lived it, and I can see the difference it makes. I am just feeling all the warm fuzzies right now. This is exactly the conversation that I wanted to have, Barry. So thank you so much. And what episode are we going to do next? Is there a topic that you'd like to dive into on Sex and the Solo Girl?
I'm sure I'll come up with something. Nothing comes to mind right now. I'm just enjoying this one.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. And, I have to say, I'm glad to know you. I'm glad to know the men in my life who are trustworthy and make me feel safe. And you are one of them. I also want to mention 2 of my favorite resources, and that helped me to learn. I'm a very heady academic person, and I'm always asking for book recommendations. So I have 2. I've read both of them 3 times. And the first is Powerful and Feminine by Rachel Jane Grover. I will link to both of these in the show notes to the Amazon links. This book is, wow, it's simple and it's practical and it's beautiful. And then, of course, something I've mentioned on both of my podcasts many times, and that's Pussy, a Reclamation by Regina Thomashauer, aka Mama Gina. Go get the links in the show notes if you kind of want one-on-one or 101s on both of these. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you to everyone who's come and joined me on my second podcast. If you want to go check out my other one, it's called Breakups, Broken Hearts, and Moving On. I'm keeping it active. I'm just buzzing off of having 2 podcasts, and I have so many cool plans. If you liked this episode, I would love to hear from you. If you would go over to Apple and leave me a 5-star rating and review. And if you didn't like this episode, keep it to yourself.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Sex and the Solo Girl with Janice Formichella, the podcast for those who want to add more flavor to their relationships with themselves and others. If you liked today's episode, make sure to head over to Instagram and let her know. See you next week.